We have former football coach and now ACC analyst Mark Richt on the phone. Hey, Mark, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Actually, I guess I should still call you coach. I mean, once a coach, always a coach, right?
Yeah, I get called coach probably more than Mark, but I'm good either way.
Okay, good.
Hey, Coach Rick, this is Kyle here. My mom is the one that sat next to you on the plane, so I guess my opening question would be, she didn't bother you too much, right?
Well, here's the deal. She started bragging about her son. When she found out I was a coach, she didn't know. I don't think she knew who I was. And when she figured it out, I think she started getting on the internet and Wikipedia me or something. And all of a sudden, she was like, wow, my son would love to have you on the show. And I'm like, well, I do that every once in a while. And then she said, would you do that for my son? And I'm like, I really don't think this woman's going to take no for an answer. So I was like, yeah. He says, well, give me your phone number. I'll have him call you. I said, well, I don't usually give my phone out to just everybody. So we worked through Amy, who works at ESPN for us and does my PR stuff. But anyway, that's why I'm on the air and I'm fired up.
Well, so are we, and I do appreciate that.
You know how moms are.
Yeah.
I don't have to apologize, right?
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
Would she take a no for an answer?
Absolutely not.
I don't think so.
I think she probably would have found you. Well, all right, Coach Rick. So my first real question is, we had Coach Bobby Bowden on the show Friday, and we talked to him about his documentary that just came out. Well, not just came out, but it's kind of just now starting to catch fire on the ACC network and everything. The Bowden Dynasty. You had one of my favorite parts in that whole film, if not my favorite part. It was after Pablo Lopez was shot, and it was the first team meeting that Coach Bowden called. If you don't mind, for those who haven't seen the documentary, can you talk a little bit about what happened after that meeting?
Well, real quick, Pablo Lopez was a player on the team. He was from Miami. He was an offensive lineman, very talented guy, and unfortunately was shot and killed at a party on campus. And there was a meeting. After that, I was a young coach, graduate assistant coach, as a matter of fact, and one of my jobs was to take roll at these meetings. So I'm in the meeting room with Coach Bowden and the team, and the staff was there too, I'm sure, the rest of the staff. But I remember being in the back of the room, and as he's talking to the players about what had happened, and you could tell he was, obviously he was troubled by what happened, but I think he was also troubled in that he didn't know where Pablo was in his faith. And so he basically just said, I don't know where Pablo is, man, to spend eternity. I don't know where he was in his faith walk. He goes, and he kind of explained the gospel that basically, God created us. He loves us. He has a place for us in heaven. Unfortunately, when Adam's sin entered all man, and we all have this sin problem, and we can't go to heaven because you got to be perfect to go there. But guess what? He loved us so much, he gave us his son Jesus to die in our place. And if you accept that gift of Christ's death, burial, and resurrection, you could be made right and be able to go to heaven. So anyway, he's like, men, and everybody had assigned seats, so there was a empty seat where Pablo used to sit. He said, men, Pablo used to sit right there in that chair, and he said, you guys are 18 to 22 years old. You think you're going to live forever just like Pablo, and he's gone. And he said, man, if that was you last night, you know where you would spend eternity. And he was talking to the players, but, the Holy Spirit spoke to me at that moment, and I was like, well, I know if I died last night where I'm going, it's not a very good place. And so Coach actually invited, anybody to come talk to him, invited the players to talk to him, if they ever wanted to talk any more about it. Well, that next morning, I went and knocked on his door, and I knocked on the door, and he said, hey, buddy, come in. And he calls you buddy when he doesn't know your name. And then, anyway, I did pray to receive Christ that morning, and that kind of changed everything for me.
You're listening to 104.3 ESPN Panama City, and we have Mark Richt on the phone with us. And I will have to echo what Kyle said. That was a part of the documentary that really spoke to me more than just about anything else. And because I never knew that. I never knew that story. And to think of all the lives that you've been able to change because of that one moment, that's what's so amazing about it. But switching gears a little bit here, I wanted to ask your opinion, and every coach that we've had on the air, this season or even throughout the summer, we've asked this. But how do you feel about the transfer portal and all these kids? And I'm not talking about the ones that are like Jalen Hurts that they were finished out their degree and then went on that fifth year. I'm talking about the ones that don't make the starting position and say, "Hey, I'm taking my ball, I'm going somewhere else." How do you feel about that?
Well, and like you said, there is a graduate transfer like Jalen Hurts, kids that have gotten their degrees and, done everything they've been asked to do. And, I think everybody's kind of cool with them being able to go to another school and play in another season. But the transfer portal is for underclassmen. It's, some people thought the transfer portal was if I go in this portal and say I'm transferring, then I can go wherever I want to and play immediately, but that's not true. You still have to sit out a year unless you win some type of a waiver for a reason why you might be going to another school. But long story short, I think the point you're getting to is football is one of the greatest gifts of football is teaching people how to handle adversity. And when the answer is to run when things get tough, that's really not helping these young men grow up. And so, and you can look at a guy like Quentin Harris, who's at Duke right now. He's a fifth-year player, but a first-year starter. Played behind Daniel Jones, who's doing so well with the Giants right now. If he would have just left, he wouldn't be doing what he's doing right now, which is lighting up the scoreboard, getting his degree at Duke, probably his postgraduate, probably getting a master's degree at Duke, getting to be coached by Coach Cutcliffe and being on a team that's really hot right now, And even Jaron Williams at Miami. I mean, Jaron Williams, things weren't going his way. And then the quarterback at Miami, and he got in the transfer portal. And then when it got down to it, we talked to him, and I'm like, Jaron, have we even seen your best? I mean, if you've shown us your best and you can't play here, then go. But you haven't shown your best. I mean, I asked him, I let him answer the question. He's like, no. And I said, well, why don't you do your best and then decide if you need to go or not? So he ends up sticking around, and now he's a starting quarterback at Miami doing great.
Yeah.
So, so many stories of guys that stuck it out and grew up as a man. I mean, I was stuck behind Jim Kelly.
Wow.
But you know what? It helped me grow up as a person. I mean, I learned a lot through the adversity of that. So I would never trade my experience for, jumping ship. So anyway, there are some times when transfer is warranted, and probably both parties are happy with it. But I think it's become too easy. The other thing I'll say, and we're probably running out of time, but a lot of kids get in these transfer portals. If you go in the transfer portal, your coach can take your scholarship at that point. You say, hey, I don't want to be here. Okay, we'll take your scholarship. And then there's not enough scholarships to go around for these kids. They're trying to find a home, and they don't have a home. They don't have a plan. And they end up losing their scholarship, and they end up losing the ability to go somewhere and get a scholarship where they're going.
Yeah, we actually were talking about that not too long ago, and it limits that team to be able to offer another kid who's willing to be fully committed, to have that scholarship. And listen, we've got, how much time do you have for us, Coach? Because we've got as much time as you want to give us.
Well, I got a hot day with my wife. I'm going to go out to the beach here in a minute.
Okay.
And she's getting ready for that. I'm getting ready for that too, but we can go a little bit more.
Okay. Tell her to put on some extra sunscreen. We have just a couple more questions for you. We don't want to keep you.
Right.
All right, Coach. So we have old school Kyle here, he's I give him a hard time a lot, but he's got a quick question for you.
Yeah.
All right.
Coach, it's nice talking with you, and thank you for all that you did for us Georgia fans. I'm from Atlanta, and I appreciate your efforts and really particular.
Well, first of all, why did they call you old school?
Well, they call me old school, I guess, because my first name is Kyle as well, and so we have two Kyles on the program, and I'm the oldest guy in the room. So
tell them the real story.
With the ACC network, I don't know how old you are, but I'm the oldest one there by about 30 years, so I'm old school too.
I'm pretty close to that. And when I first came to Panama City, I was out at the beach, and I was at a local McDonald's there. And there was this young man who was on the phone with his girlfriend, and he hung up the phone, and I was just sitting there, and he kind of looks at me, and he goes, "Man, I just don't know if I can do this. I just don't know anymore." And I go, What are you talking about?" And he goes, "Man, I love this girl, but I just don't know this marriage thing, man. I just don't know if I can do this." And I just kind of said, "Hey, look, man, you just got to stick to it. You just got to stay in there and hang in there, and you'll grow together." And so he goes, "You mean kind of like old school?" And I said, "Yeah, I guess so." And so when he left, he goes, "Hey, man, thanks, old school. I appreciate it." And it kind of stuck from that point forward.
Well, that's a good reason. That's a good reason to be called old school.
But I just have one question I'd like to ask you, and which is, and I was watching the game that night in Atlanta in the SEC championship game, and y'all were driving on Alabama. You know, you had all the momentum,
right?
And Aaron Murray throws the pass, and it's tipped, and the receiver, and it was just so, oh man, it was such a good game and so close. And I just wondered how does a coach and how does a team, how do you get over that? I mean, how do you deal with that and then move forward, or can you, or maybe that's what it is.
You don't get over it. You don't get over your losses. It's funny, just when I reminisce about my time as a coach and things that pop in my head even while we're on the air, it almost always is around about a loss. It's hardly ever, talking about this great victory, this great thing that happened. For whatever reason, those losses probably stick with you harder than than even the great victories that you have. But those are hard to get over. And it's when it's the last game of the year, it's even harder. And sometimes it's the last game of some guy's career, which makes it even harder. You might have a tough loss in the middle of the season, and you get to hook it up next week. You get to forget about it and go play somebody and win another game, or have an experience that makes that loss not so bad. But when it's the last game of the year, and it's for so much, and being that close to playing in the national championship game certainly is one of the tougher times in my coaching career, and I'm sure those players too.
Well, Coach, we really do appreciate your time, and please tell Miss Catherine that we appreciate her let us share you for just a little while.
And Kyle, you're the one with the mom, right?
Yes, sir.
You tell your mom I said, truth be told, I was scared to say no.
Well,
I love it.
Coach, if you don't mind, this is old school. I got one last question. We heard all about Miss Ann Bowden's banana pudding.
Oh, yeah.
And I just wondered, did you ever get to have a little bit of that banana pudding?
Oh, this is a bad question for me. I don't like banana pudding.
Oh, no.
Oh, my gosh.
But I'm sure I was offered the ability to eat it, but I probably didn't even try it because somewhere along the way I decided I didn't like banana pudding. But I know it's epic and it's historic and it's the greatest banana pudding or whatever you call it in the history of the world, I'm sure.
Well, Coach, thanks so much again for your time, and we'll be following you on the ACC network, and just wish you the best, and enjoy your time at the beach.
We'll do it. We'll see you.
Thank you.
Coach, thank you.
Bye-bye.